Got a pile of them.
I didn't know that.
Just, we've got one scheduled for next
My brain
September.
hard time.
So
I
I'm
know
hoping it'll settle down. I think it probably will.
three other like
Oh, my goodness.
Wizard from black and white to color.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was the first one.
Yeah. So it would have been, yeah, I'm sure they would have.
master of French.
Let me get my books.
Got to take my.
Are we ready?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
And you have my.
Um,
I was gonna take this away, otherwise it like makes some weird sounds.
Yeah.
So
And the pointer,
it's right here.
okay, he was
Actually,
charging it.
Besides losing it on you, I'll give it to you.
Oh,
I
and
do
there
wanna
we
do that.
go.
Sorry about that.
No, no problem. I'm going to practice.
This is
I've got it changed in another mode. There we go.
I think up is this one.
I've got one like this.
We got you.
Yeah.
You're good.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, hopefully you guys had a longer lunch than I did. Basically, I was just sprinting down the hallways. So we have up next Pam McCue. Pam is going to be telling us about the science and wonder of the Shroud of Turin. Pam McCue is focused on the science and wonder of the Shroud of Turin. She began researching the shroud intensely in 2014 after she retired as a senior executive in the Department of Defense. Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Pam has a bachelor's and master's degree in electrical engineering with 30 years of experience in the defense science and technology. Pam has presented the shroud to groups at churches, schools, retreats, and public venues. She developed a mobile display and now displays the Othenia exhibit. She works closely with the Othenia and supports the National Shroud of Turin's exhibit as they develop a permanent exhibit in Washington, D.C. Will you please help me to welcome Pam McCue?
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today talking about the Shroud of Turin. I've been sharing the shroud for those years, 10 years now, a little over, and I have the exhibits now. So I've been driving tens of thousands of miles, sharing the exhibit with tens of thousands of people for the last year. And I do this because the shroud is so compelling. I know that you guys know that. You're spending a week here. It's, of course, it's of interest to countless fields of study, but it's Jesus. And there is just nothing better than sharing Jesus through the shroud. It's so visual and so high impact. So I hope that this talk inspires you, especially on the science. I hope it gives some perspective on the science, but I hope it inspires you to study the shroud and to kind of make your own way to share it. This is the shroud as it was displayed in 2015. Of course, you guys know it. There's a few general slides in the front that I'm using for the Meet the Shroud group downstairs tomorrow. I'm going to skip through those really fast, but I want to make one comment on this one. So the shroud has been in Turin since 1578. It's now in St. John the Baptist Cathedral there. It left Turin twice It left once in 1706. There was, I think it was the War for Spanish Succession, but there was the potential for artillery firing into there from France, and so the custodians moved the shroud to Genoa. So it was gone for a few months then. And then in World War II, they moved the shroud to protect it from the Nazis who were actively hunting for it. And it stayed gone a little longer then, but made its way back pretty quickly after the war. The reason that I say that really is many people see it and think that the replica is the real shroud. So I like to make sure to make the point that it's in Turin. So if you haven't seen it in Turin, you haven't seen the real one. We're very fortunate that the copies also give us such a good sense of the shroud. So I'm not going to show how it wrapped, because you guys know that. Of course, you know that the tracks on the side that are so prominent are actually the burn marks. This is one of those enhanced feature images that I used. And of course, you know the mystery of the impact of the photographic negative. So the first chart that I will talk about are the characteristics of the man in the shroud. So we've come to a good understanding of what Jesus looked like based on the study of the shroud. There are different versions of statues, but the statues have all the same basic characteristics. The one that's in this figure is one by Luigi Mattei, which was the first big well-known one, and it's in many places. The Othonia exhibits that are around the world, as many as possible, have the Luigi Mattei statue. So it records the posture of the body and the characteristics of the body. So the man, Jesus, was between 5'10" and 5'11" tall. We would know it a little better if the body was flattened, but we think because the body was in rigor mortis when the image was made, the knees are up and the head and shoulders are up a little bit. So there's a range between 5'10" and 5'11". I noticed Dr. Jackson yesterday used 5'10" and a half, so I think that's right in the middle. That's tall for a Jewish man in the first century, but certainly not out of bounds. Average at the time for a Jewish male was 5'5". So he had facial hair and long hair that was caught loosely in the back. He had a long, prominent nose, a narrow oval face, and almond-shaped eyes, all of which are characteristic of the Jewish race. He weighed, I don't think I said this, he weighed about 170 pounds, and you can tell from the image he was muscled, meaning he probably did heavy labor, which is consistent with him being the son of a carpenter who, carpenters did a lot of stonework in that culture. His beard is split in the middle where hairs were removed from it. You can see that in the images. And of course, he has wounds that are consistent with a Roman crucifixion. And we'll talk more about that. And I mentioned that the body was in rigor mortis. I think the biggest way to kind of get a sense of that is to look at the back, because if there was not some stiffening, the back would be flat. And you can clearly tell when you look at the photographic negative that it isn't flat. There are no signs of decomposition on the body, which is again consistent with the body still being in rigor mortis when the image was made. So the man in the shroud looks like Jesus, clearly. And all four Gospels tell us that there was a shroud. So I want to look, before we start talking about the image and things that we see from the image, I want to look at some of the external things to examine the evidence for, could this be the shroud? So I can get stuck on this chart, and I encourage you to, if I'm killing you with it, or if you think I'm just going down a rabbit hole, to wave at me. Nan, I'm counting on you to do that. So this is the carbon-14 chart. So in modern times, the biggest controversy has been the dating of the linen cloth. So that's important. It would really help if all the signs said that linen cloth was 1st century. So the question is it 1st century or is it 13th, 14th century when it showed up in Europe? I say that now 1st century is definitely the best assessment. Many cloth experts think that the shroud looks like 1st century cloth. It's really fine quality for 1st century linen cloth, and it looks consistent with linen cloth that was made in Egypt and Syria and Palestine. An anecdote is that when the carbon-14 testers were looking for cloth as control samples, they could not find any cloth in the 13th, 14th century, which there's a lot more cloth from that time available. They couldn't find any that were similar to the shroud. So that's pretty significant. There is also a particular Z-stitch, it's called, on the shroud that sews a side strip onto the shroud that has been matched to a 1st century linen that was recovered from Masada in Israel. Again, that's a pretty powerful connection to the 1st century. And then now, of course, the carbon-14 has really been discredited. Although if you look on the internet, it won't seem like everyone's gotten the message yet. So the carbon-14 dates were 1260 to 1390, and carbon-14 is a great dating process, when a system, way of estimating dates when it works. But from the beginning, it looked inconsistent. So now we've found that the whole test was seriously flawed. The testers hid data so that we wouldn't see the statistics of the test. And the statistics of the test showed that you weren't testing a single item because the statistics weren't random. They got older as individual measurements got older as you went toward the center of the cloth. And what that means, that doesn't mean that the individual measurements were bad, but it means that we don't know how to interpret those measurements. And there's various things that it could be. It could be many people have proposed that was a really bad spot to take the samples, and that maybe there was contamination there. Maybe there was a patch that was done there. Others don't believe that's the case. There are some that believe there was some kind of contamination, maybe that was a result of the process that formed the image. And if that was the case, if you test it again, you still probably won't be able to understand the results. So it still leads to more controversy on the carbon-14 dating. Some people want to retest immediately. To retest, you have to cut fibers out and destroy them. and you really need a lot of samples around the cloth, which they weren't willing to do the first time, and they're not going to be any more willing to do it this time. So we're left with what we have, and that's not nothing. So we have that Z-stitch, we have the look and feel of the linen, and there's been 5 additional dating methods that have been used to estimate the date. They're not as good as carbon-14, certainly not in terms of precision, but what they're doing is they're trying to estimate the integrity of the cloth, and basically they're testing the strength of it, they're testing chemical components of it, and they're saying, does this compare best to first century linen, or does it compare to later linen? All 5 of those tests that have been done by various people show that it is consistent with first century linen. So I think I would call the linen test, the linen assessment, first century until we get more information, and be fairly confident with it. Pollen is a good source of forensic information for the shroud because it's microscopic, it's nearly indestructible, and it sticks well. In 1973, they used sticky tape analysis to remove pollen from the cloth. And Max Frey, who is a Swiss criminologist, found 58 species of plants. 35 of them were from Israel, 13 were unique to the Holy Land, and 6 were from the Middle East, kind of Asia Minor area, and 17 were from Europe. There is some legitimate criticism of the pollen work because to give him grace, at the time that Max Frey did that, there were no pollen databases. So he was kind of working from scratch. And then he died as he was still working on the cataloging it and getting it into a shape that would really, he could pass on to the world. So there's criticism that says it really wasn't documented well enough. But that said, there are other people who have also identified pollen from it. So I think that the fact that it's been in Israel, Asia Minor, and Europe, and there's pollen from all those places is very high confidence. There are also dirt particles that were removed from the shroud, from the foot area, the knees, and the nose. And this dirt is a type of travertine aragonite limestone that's the building material in Jerusalem. And it's a fairly rare building material. And in fact, there is a chemical component, I believe it's strontium, that is very uniquely associated with the building material around Jerusalem. So that is another very good indicator that it was there in the Holy Land. We have images of Jesus that connect with the shroud. These are famous. They're the face of Jesus in most every church in the East. In many of our churches, I've seen some of them here at the Augustine Institute. And this first one is the oldest picture of Jesus that we have identified where he looks like Jesus. Before this, he looked like a Greek guy or a Roman guy. So this was made about 550 AD, and it's in St. Catherine's Monastery in Egypt, in Sinai, Egypt. And if you compare it to the shroud, facial recognition, experts who have looked at it say there is just no doubt that it was drawn from the shroud. And there are a lot of points of congruence. They use points of congruence to say how strong it matches. 45 to 60 is really good. Probably it's enough for evidence in court. This has 150 points of congruence. So, natural things like the shape of the nose and the beard and the mouth. But I want to point out 3 that are really, really shroud related. So the first one is there is a space on the shroud, and you can really see it in the negative view, but the natural view also, where you see a separation between the hair and the face. And so shroud analysts think that comes from a chin band that would have been on the body at burial. That is a common Jewish burial practice. So that's what they think that chin band is. But if you look at all the icons, they maintain having a band. It's not always as thick, but they maintain having that separation between the hair and the face. There's a thickening of the neck here. And you can see it here on the shroud. Well, if you look at the statues don't show a thick neck. I used to look at these images before I knew about the shroud connection and think it looked like they were saying he had a goiter or something. And so what the shroud analysts think is that thickness is a fold in the linen. They have reconstructed it. It's kind of a fold in the linen, and it's not really part of the body. So the statues that we make of it don't have that thickness, but clearly the artist here copied it. And then the other factor is very bony hands. That's the other one that I'll point out. So those are characteristics that make people who compare faces think that at least the first one who drew that image saw the shroud. These are I love these. These are a few titles that were used in early years that describe something that sounds to me like the shroud. Shroud, image of our Lord and Savior at full length. Image-bearing icon, full-length body image of Jesus, image of Christ of divine origin, image of God incarnate, and my personal favorite, an awesome image of Christ, which was an object of particular veneration. All those were the early years, and I think that certainly connects me to the shroud. So if you look at the ancient history, a lot of times you'll hear, we just didn't see it before it showed up in the 13th century, 14th century. But I think there's snippets of it. There may not be a smoking gun for historians, and they're still looking at it and researching, but I think you can see the track of it pretty good. So it's certainly, we know the Gospels place it in Jerusalem, all 4 of them. And then there is a reference that was actually recorded in the Council of Nicaea that was attributed to a sermon by St. Athanasius, who was an early church leader. And he said that the shroud went to Assyria. And what that referenced was Antioch. And that makes a lot of sense because Antioch was the biggest Christian center outside Jerusalem. He said it went there in 68 AD. Well, it was 70 AD when Jerusalem was destroyed. So it makes a lot of sense that it went to Antioch. And then there's a lot of debate about how long it would have stayed in Antioch or whether it went there at all. I'm in the camp of it went there. We know it was I call it out and about in Asia Minor. So about 540, you started seeing a lot more reports of it. There was a new Greek word that was coined called, I'm not going to say it right, akerapoita. And akerapoita meant not made with human hands. And there's no doubt these shroud images were part of what was referenced there in my mind anyway. So it was out and about in Asia Minor. At some point it went to Constantinople and was secured there. I think the range of dates that it probably went to Constantinople, it may have gone there around 500, but it was then out and about after that. But it ended up there finally sometime between 700 and 950. And the difference there is which description of precious items in history do you think was the shroud? So I'm more of the camp that it was probably in Constantinople by 700 or so. And then in Constantinople, it stayed there until the West took over Constantinople after the Fourth Crusade. So the Fourth Crusade was in 1204, and sometime between 1204 and 1261, when the West was kicked out of there, the shroud made its way to France. So that's my my assessment and view of the early history. So now I'm going to quickly go through this too, because I suspect that most of you that are in here know this pretty well. So I want to share some of my insights from a science perspective, I think, and analysis perspective of the signs of the crucifixion. But any of you who have looked at it, I know you relate to that signs of the crucifixion. So the first thing that we see is the scourge wounds. You see them really clearly on the back, but really they're all up and down the body. You can really see it on the back. About 2/3 of them are on the back, and about 1/3 on the front. One of the forensic teams counted 372 wounds, and we don't see the sides of the body, so there would probably be 600. I think I heard that Giulio Fanti estimated 500. He had done a count, and he counted 500, and that could well be. And these are not just scratches. These are deep clotted wounds. And they are consistent with a Roman flagrum that has 3 strands and 2 metal balls on the end of each strand. And the forensics team reconstructed that it was two scourgers standing behind and to the side that were alternately doing the lashes. If you look at the real shroud with ultraviolet light, you see serum rings surrounding these wounds, and this is one of the things that give the medical community so much confidence that it really was a crucified body that was wrapped in the shroud. It was not faked up. The crown of thorns, you can see not the circlet style, but all the way around, because you can see the wounds that are on top of the head. And experts counted about 50 wounds in the head that came from the crown of thorns. And it's really consistent with Eastern crowns that it would be a full cap, because Jewish kings would have had a cap, not a circlet. There are abrasions on the shoulders that are consistent with carrying the crossbeam of the cross. So we often in art see a complete cross being carried, but there was writings in the first century about crucifixions, and they described it as most often the vertical beam was in place. That's called the stipes, I think, and the patibulum, which is the crossbeam, is what the convicted carried. And it would usually be carried tied loosely, with arms tied loosely to it. And the wounds, the abrasions that you can see on the shoulders are consistent with carrying the crossbar. And a comment there, our tradition says that Jesus fell 3 times. And I'm Catholic. Our Catholic tradition says Jesus fell 3 times. It doesn't say it in the Bible, but you can imagine with that dirt that was recovered from the knees and the nose, and with thinking about that terrible beating. I forgot to mention it, but doctors who examined just the scourging said that he probably would have been in hemorrhagic shock from losing 20% of his blood. That was a really traumatic event. The crown of thorns was painful, but the scourging was very tremendous. So you can imagine in that falling multiple times. Okay, so you see nail holes in the right foot. That's the nail hole right there. And in the left wrist. So the right foot, Dr. Jackson had a really good assessment of this that they had done some work on. You see the left foot it kind of twisted to the side and kind of mangled. And Dr. Jackson did some mock crucifixions and did some work and came to the conclusion that it was very likely that the left foot may have been nailed through the side of the foot. And the foot on the bottom would have been the right foot, and it would have been nailed flat on. And I think that's probably a good assessment. And then the significant thing on the hands is that it's not in the palm, it's in the wrist area. And I know many of you have probably heard that before. Pierre Barbet was the first one who wrote about that. He was a French doctor in the 30s, I think, who did work with cadavers to show the effects of some of the crucifixion. And his assessment, and many doctors after, were that you couldn't nail through the center of the palm or the body weight would pull through. So it needed to be in the wrist area. And it could be either in the wrist area or it could be in the meaty part of the palm. Dr. Barbet also assessed, and you'll hear this sometimes, that that would have caused the thumb to contract, and that's why you don't see thumbs on the body. So there's been, at this conference, and earlier too, I think, there's been quite a bit of discussion about that, and I think the conclusion by most experts now is that's not really true, that it wouldn't be that extreme, and that's not what the thumb would do. And so the current, I think, best assessment is that perhaps the thumbs were tied together to just keep them in place. And interestingly, that is something that happens commonly even now with burials. When they're preparing bodies, funeral homes are preparing bodies for burial, they'll often have to kind of tie the thumbs together to keep the hands in place. So I think that's an assessment that'll propagate now. So Pierre Barbet also did work on the wound in the side. So the wound in the side is near the damaged area, but you can still see it. And you can see the liquid that flowed from it, blood and water. And that's exactly what you see. You see blood and clear liquid. And so in his work with cadavers, Pierre Barbet found that it would have, the lance would have penetrated between the 5th and 6th rib. The wound matches the size of a Roman lance, and it would have pierced the pleura surrounding the lungs, the pericardium surrounding the heart, and the heart's right atrium. And it was definitely after death, or you would see no watery liquid, you would only see blood. So the water that flowed was pericardial fluid and pleural effusion. And you might wonder, is it normal? It was a long time before art showed the lance wound being on the right side of the body. And you might think, is that right? Because, the heart's more to the left. Why would it be on the right side? Well, that was exactly how the Romans speared someone. That was documented in Julius Caesar's commentaries on the Gallic War. That's how they were trained. It put them in the best position to protect themselves while attacking their enemies. So that's exactly how a Roman soldier would have attacked. So last thing here, in this close-up of the face, I think this is that beautiful face that I know all of us are connected to. You can see the wounds. You can see the wounds on the cheeks, swollen cheeks, abrasions on the nose, probably broken cartilage on the nose. And this could have happened, it did happen all the way along the way. And I think despite all the terrible wounds, I look at that face and I see peace. I have had a lot of people in the exhibits get so distressed at the crucifixion and how badly Jesus was treated in the crucifixion. And what I always try to do is kind of lead people to the hopeful look in this face. Someone made the comment that he was resting in a job well done. I think I tend to look at it as waiting for the resurrection. So Pope Benedict had what's my current favorite quote, and I'm going to have to read it because I always use the wrong words. He said that the shroud was the icon of Holy Saturday, the day that God remained hidden and shrouded in stillness. And I think that's beautiful. So now I'm gonna do the heavy image part, and I want to talk about the strangeness of the shroud and what keeps people studying it so much today. Why we have so many people here for the conference. So you guys, I know, are familiar. There's two components that make up the image. The first is blood. And blood was probably on there first. There's quite a bit of blood, and there's been no small amount of debate over the years of why is there still so much blood? Wouldn't they have cleaned the body up? Well, it's consistent with Jewish burial practices to keep the blood with the body. So that isn't so much a surprise. It's mostly clotted blood. And I already mentioned with ultraviolet light, you can see how the serum rings separate from the dark cellular mass, just like real blood does. So in the 70s, I think it was the 70s, might have been the 80s, it met a test where it met 12 out of 12 factors to say that it was whole human blood, AB blood type. So there's a little controversy, a little go back on that now, because AB, for one, AB blood type tends to show up a lot, so it has a high frequency, but still it was tested to be AB blood type, and that's what we've got. And that is consistent with the Sudarium, and it's also consistent, if you're a Catholic, with Eucharistic miracles that have been typed as AB blood type. There's also a debate about whether you can really say it was whole human blood, because some of those early tests could have, I think they call it cross-reactivity, so that chickens, or I don't remember if it was chickens are in my mind. I know monkeys and chickens might also show up. That doesn't really cause me any trouble. And I don't think it causes most people trouble, because you've got all the wounds and the serum effects, and it's not It is not a chicken that's wrapped in that shroud. It's a man. So I think there is still a lot of debate about the blood, and we would like more testing, but I think it's pretty conclusive. Partial DNA has been detected, but not a full sequence, and I don't think as old as it is, anybody thinks we'll ever have a full sequence. Barry Schwartz was known to say if they ever got a full DNA sequence off the shroud, it would be a middle-aged woman, European woman, because it would have come from the poor Clares as they were crying over it and repairing it in the 1300s. I mentioned before, there's no sign of decomposition. So generally, it's in really good agreement that the shroud wrapped a real crucified man. So the non-blood image is what's so strange, right? So this is from the nose area. And it's, I may go through to my question time. This is from the nose area, and you can see this is the image. This is it. It is very light. It is only on the top couple of fibers of the cloth, not threads, fibers. So each of those, these are the threads, and the threads are made up of 100 to 200 fibers. It's only the top 1 or 2 fibers that have the color in it. And it's the same color, it's a consistent yellow-brown color. So chemists who have looked at it think that it comes from the main plant cell, and that it was some action that basically dehydrated the fiber, those particular fibers. You could take a razor blade and you could just strip all that off very easily, and there would be no image left. This is the nose area, so it's the darkest. And where it's darker, the color is the same yellow-brown color. But where it was darker, there's more of the fibers in that area that have the color. So there's a higher density of fiber coloration. And this is the whole character that gives us that photographic negative image. It's basically, it's not pixels, it's fibers, but it's basically the same as being pixelated, and it reflects the light, and that's why you get the photographic negative. So, in looking at it, we also know what it did not come from. It did not come from anything liquid. If you go back and you look at the blood, you see the blood flowed. It had cementation. It runs between the threads. It penetrates the threads. You can see the blood on the back side of the thread, of the back side of the cloth. You cannot see the image on the back side of the cloth. It only is from the inside where the body was. So, there. That's what gives you that. So that superficial coloration gives us this photographic negative, first seen in 1898, can't be reproduced. Nobody has come up with any kind of way to reproduce even a smaller thing that they can create and give you this kind of detailed photographic negative. So people have worked for centuries. This is a picture of Dr. Jackson. He's my favorite. So he has done much work with the image. And so people have worked hard to understand it. I showed you that statue. We do understand it now. This was a momentous thing, them being able to show that there were 3-dimensional properties that were also in the image. So that things that are closer to the cloth are darker, and things that are further away from the cloth are lighter. And if you just plot it that way, you get a well-resolved human image. There's also nothing like that in the world. And then the third strange characteristic is when you look at all that, you realize that parts of the body that were close to the shroud but not touching it contribute to the image. And just the quick images, the nose was touching, the eyes were not. You know, the neck, there's a little bunching there, but the neck wouldn't have been touching. So that is the third strange characteristic. So the photographic negative, the 3D quality, and the fact that it was made by body parts that were not touching. And by the way, they verified, so it's within about a half an inch. So parts of the body that were within about a half an inch but not touching made the image area on the shroud. And so that's why the hands look so bony. People who have examined it say you can actually see bone structure that you would not be able to see through the skin, but because it's so close there, you can see the bone structure. So the hands are the easiest place. There's also a little bit around the mouth and the skull. So what made the image then? So radiation is the only solution, really, when you look at it. Although I think Giulio Fanti is looking at electrolysis of sorts as some kind of solution for it, but there's been nothing that comes close to looking like that. Radiation is natural, we all know it. The sun burns our skin, microwaves cook our food, X-rays make images in our body. It's just energy that has an effect on you from afar. But of course, the thing with the shroud is it came from the body. But that isn't so mysterious to us, is it? I mean, people who think about it being Jesus and think about the resurrection, it's starting to sound kind of familiar. So the reason I put this up, this is the one I often, if I'm doing the easy talk on it, I say it was probably light energy. It was probably a lot more complicated than just saying light energy. But we had, I say we like I did it. People, Dr. Jackson, Paolo de Lazzaro from Italy, they have set up and done tests with lasers and showed that you can get that superficial effect of color on linen with light energy. It's vacuum ultraviolet light with with light but not a lot of heat, so it doesn't burn it up. So that's why you'll hear a lot of people say light energy, but it had to be a lot of energy in a very, very short period of time, and we don't have enough lasers that exist in the world to try to make the image of a man. We can just color a few fibers. So if you look at the concept, Dr. Jackson has defined some theories which I think help get it in our mind, and I've heard other people reference them. Disappearing body theory, radiation fall-through hypothesis, mechanically transparent man. And I think these next couple illustrate. So the body is in the tomb, wrapped in the shroud. At some moment, the body is no longer mass, it's energy. The energy, the cloth falls through because there's no mass to hold it up anymore. There's no body to hold it up. And that's the point where the cloth is marked on the inside of the cloth. And this is just another graphic that gives you the sense of that flash of light. So I think that's it. I think those are the things that are really hard to absorb. When we do the exhibit, I try to leave it with the vision of the resurrection and the vision that the body didn't stay there, but having actually science that connects with the resurrection is very exciting. So I think the shroud is for all of us. It was for the apostles. It's for us too. And I hope, as I said in the beginning, I hope you all find your way to share it. So thank you. Were you waving at me? And I did.
All right, we probably have time for one quick question.
I'll be around.
You
Go ahead.
mentioned briefly the side strip. Are people centering their research on that?
You know, no, I don't think there's much talk about that at all. I think I think it's well documented. Let's see if I can get a picture.
No conjecture of who may have done it?
It was almost certainly done in the beginning. And there's a debate, it's right along that line where right there, and it's sewn all the way down. Right there. And they think it was done in the beginning. I haven't heard anyone that didn't think it was original. In fact, Dr. Jackson had some images where it was lit behind and it just continues on. So, you know, it may have been even sewn in there in the very beginning. I've heard some people say that maybe that was the strip that they used to secure the shroud around the body, but I don't know that there's any evidence for that.
All right, let's give her one more round of applause.